Hello, this is Justified Jewel Podcast, and I'm your host, Joanne Cox. You can find out more about me at justifieddjewel.com. We are running many episodes in this political scheme that we're going to teach you, educate you, and enlighten you on some things that we think that you should know before you go to the polls. We are taping this, we're right here in North Carolina. Because of these different episodes, you will have the same wonderful educated guest, which is Brian Winters. Welcome again, Brian.
Hello, Joanne. Thanks for having me back.
Yes. And so, what is our topic today? Because I didn't leave the viewers in on the last episode. What are we
Today,
talking about today?
today I thought we could talk about paid family leave.
Ooh. Mm.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people say. This is incredibly popular, right? It polls more than 80% of voters support paid family leave. And yet the United States I want to say the United States is extraordinary in the world in that we're one of only a handful of countries that does not make sure new mothers get paid time off from work. If you lived in India or North Korea, a new mother would get time off and get paid for it. But in the United States, we have the Family Medical Leave Act signed back in the 90s by President Clinton that ensures that new mothers can get 12 weeks off unpaid. All they're guaranteed is that they can't be fired for 12 weeks.
Now, my understanding, it depends on the establishment. Some large companies do. Not only do they get paid the mothers, but they allow the fathers to actually have that time off. And what works in a beneficial way is that the mother can take 6 weeks and then the father can take six, because the average daycare will not accept a child until they are, 6 weeks old. So we need that time. And we're not just talking about time off, really, Brian, for maternity leave, are we? Are we talking time off for medical, any time off paid? How does that work?
Yes, it does include other medical events.
Mhm.
If a family you need caregiving time because somebody's come down with cancer,
Mhm.
things like that. Others
Yep.
other serious illnesses. So it's
Mhm.
the same set of conditions that are currently under the Family Medical Leave Act. So if you would qualify under that, you would qualify under the proposed paid family leave program. So
Now,
so we're talking about this just for your viewers in the context of the Populist Act. And the
mhm.
Populist Act is a legislative package that the voters of the United States can collectively bargain for in the 2026 election that would improve the quality of life for every single American. And so Joanne and I, we've been talking about all the amazing things that we could accomplish as a nation if we worked together and broke the chains of partisan politics.
And when we vote for this, we are wanting this to be universal, not just for certain companies, but for all of America. Is that correct? We want to
That,
make
that
sure everyone gets this.
Yes, that's correct. And so some states, California, for example, does require paid maternity leave, and as you say, some companies offer these sorts of benefits, but they're not guaranteed. And
Mhm.
as you probably know, you can probably guess, the workers at the bottom of the economic ladder are the ones who are least likely to be able to have these benefits with their
Mhm.
jobs, and they're often the ones who can't afford to take the time off. There was a
Mhm.
survey a few years back that looked at when new mothers went back to work, and they found that 25% of them went back to work within 2 weeks.
Mhm.
And I guarantee you, Joanne, that those
Yeah.
no mothers weren't going back to work because they really loved their jobs and wanted to get away from their newborns. I
Yeah.
guarantee you they were doing it because they couldn't afford anything else.
To not. Hmm.
And it doesn't have to be that way. We're the
Yes.
richest country in the world,
Hmm.
and it takes a toll on mothers and new babies. Like, it is good for babies to spend
Hmm.
time with their mothers. Like,
That's
this should
right.
not this
They
should
need
not
that
come as a
connection.
shock.
Right. They should have that connection. But not only after the baby is born, sometimes women go into some state of having complications before the birth. And the doctor is saying you need to stay off your feet completely in order for this baby to come out and be healthy. So now we're talking about leave before you actually have the baby. And I'm believing that that would be incorporated still up under maternity leave.
Correct. Yes, under paid family leave,
Paid
it could
family
start
leave.
up to a month before your due date.
Okay. Okay.
So that's how it would work. And so what the Populist Act offers is 18 weeks of paid family leave, and the amount that you would get paid, it would depend on how much money you've earned in the last 3 years. So it would take the greatest amount that you earned in the last 3 years, and you would get reimbursed 2/3 of if that makes sense.
Yes. And so when you say the last 3 years, it doesn't have to be with the firm that you're with right now.
That's correct, because this would be a universal national program that everyone participate in. If you
Mhm.
change jobs the week before you gave birth, or you had, some sort of family emergency that you needed caregiving time for, you would be
Mhm.
covered.
Okay. Okay. That's great to know exactly how that would actually work.
I should say, just for some of the fine print, that some of the protections, while you still have paid family leave, some of the job security things don't all kick in. I want to say until 90 days. That if you did in fact just change jobs and then immediately say I'm going to take 18 weeks off, that
Yeah.
they may not hold your job if you're brand new.
Yeah. There's always some stipulations there.
Yeah,
As long as you read the fine print, but what we're working toward is to just make sure that that is around the table, on ordinary grounds, that you would be able to have that. And I think that is very important that we know that, because we know that now we can go into actually talking about caregiving, because what does that mean? That what are we fighting for when it comes to caregiving, and what's the definition of caregiving?
again, it's the same qualifying events that are under the current law under the Family Medical Leave Act, and I'm sorry I don't have those
Mm-hmm.
directly in front of me right now.
That's okay.
A couple of the other details I do remember off the top of my head. Again, the legislative package is 2,000 pages long. I spent 8 months working on it. I learned an awful lot, and I remember a whole bunch, but I cannot pull up every single detail off
And
the
and
top of my head.
and we appreciate you sharing that, because see, we were talking about maternity leave, and when you think of maternity leave, you think of mother with baby, but when we think of caregiving, we can also have time for caregiving if someone, a family member or someone that's close to us, and maybe they're on dialysis or whatever medical condition it is, and now we need to take care of them, or someone that has cognitive issues, that is considered caregiving, because they cannot be left alone under certain degrees.
Yeah,
So, caregiving is very broad.
absolutely. Yes. And you're correct. This is not just maternity leave. I gave the example of the United States being one of only, I think, 3 nations on the planet that doesn't have paid maternity leave.
Mhm.
But paid family leave is slightly different. So it's more expansive in what we're proposing, and it's based on
Right.
model legislation introduced by Senator Kirsten Gillibrand of New York, they've introduced this for a number of years because this is good policy. Again, this is very popular. People understand that it's important to be able to spend time with your family when it's needed. However, Congress Congress has failed to act on it. So we, the people, can do better by representing ourselves instead of by hoping that the red team and blue team will look out for us.
And what I like to keep bringing up, that some people don't know what falls under that umbrella. And we talked about maternity leave, and then we talked about a different type of care giving and things of that nature. But there's something else that I would like to talk about when it comes to caregiving, and that is sometimes a person simply needs to first be trained in order to do the caregiving. I wonder what umbrella would that fall under, because you can't be a caregiver unless you have a certain amount of training to do that, especially if it's an in-home person in your home and not a facility.
Joanne, as we do these things, at any time, if you say, Brian, I would like more information, we can pause our recording, and I will look up the details for you and report back promptly. Um,
Well, you know what? Whether you have the answers right now is something that I'm doing as a teaser to let people know what is it that that's going to fall under. And I didn't think about that because I'm not in the childbearing stage. I'm not actually taking care of a parent or something like this. But now I realize I need time off to be able to take this class so that I can do that. And it's just something that people can literally, we want them to look it up for themselves. We want them to find out what goes under what title, what goes under what umbrella. And we're just putting this out, just a tip of the iceberg, so that we can want to know more. Because when you don't have hope and you don't feel like you have a voice, and I keep saying these same words over and over, voice and hope, that you don't even want to research. You are the historian. You know the background, you know when it started, you know what we need to bring to Congress, legislation, these type of things. But we now need to ask ourselves, and maybe to you, as in, what would that fall up under? How will that work? And we're still up under this paid family leave. That's what this title is about. Yes.
so, so I can give you a few more details. If you visit my website, votewithbrian.com, you can read the Populist Act.
Mm-hmm.
You can download the whole act or parts of it. Paid family leave is section 814, so it's in Title 8, which is the Title 8 is unstack employment. So it deals with employment and employment related issues.
Thank you.
Some of the other details you might want to know how this is paid for. This is a national insurance program. And so employers and employees would both contribute 0.3% of their paycheck to this insurance fund. And then that insurance fund would pay people who need paid family leave. It would pay a minimum of $600 a month, no matter how little you'd earned. If you're qualified, it would be at least $600 a month, and then the maximum would be $3,600 a month.
Wow,
So,
that's
as I
great.
said, 2/3 of whatever your highest salary was in the previous 3 years, but 600 and 3,600 are the low and the high end of the range, and that's indexed for inflation as well.
Okay. Now, according to these notes that I have in front of me about a higher infant mortality rate means more dead babies. How is that even talking about what we're talking about?
I'm so glad you brought that up, Joanne. Yes, the United States, we have a much higher infant mortality rate than most other industrialized nations, and a big contributing factor is the fact, again, that maybe as many as a quarter of women go back to work within 2 weeks. They've
Mm,
done studies from around the globe of these nations that do have paid maternity leave, and they find that any increase in the more time mothers get to spend with their children, the infant mortality rate goes down. And so, if we established paid family leave, if we could bring our infant mortality rate down to the level of the countries in the European Union, that would be almost 8,000 newborns who would live to see their first birthday. That,
mm,
again, these are babies that are being born, and they're dying before their first birthday. And to a
mm.
certain extent, you can connect that to the lack of paid family leave, and
Right.
it's unnecessary. We can
Yeah.
we can look out for all Americans, even the youngest and most vulnerable.
And
Especially
those are things that we just don't even think about. We don't make that connection. Of
because I mean, it's not, nobody's going to lead with this on the news, Joanne, that,
course
the new mother had to go back to work and her infant died. Like, that's not
not.
a news story, but
Yeah.
it's one of
Yeah.
those many preventable deaths in this country. I think, as we've talked about, poverty is attributed to 800 premature deaths every single day in this country. 200,000 people a year die prematurely because of poverty. It's a
And
policy choice that we've made to allow it to exist, and we don't have to. We can do
and
better. We can end poverty in this country if we work together, if we come together.
and you usually bring forth after the birth, but I keep thinking about before the birth. And I know that there are people that stand on their feet too long, but they're pressured because that was their job before the pregnancy. So now they're standing and they actually have stillborn, meaning that the child is already dead, before birth, and it's due to the fact of them not taking care of themselves and believing that they have to do that work the same way they did it before the pregnancy, and it's too many hours and it's too much standing, and sometimes it's too much of something that they have to inhale during that time
Mm,
frame, and all of that can lead to the mortality of the babies.
absolutely. And remember, one of the biggest planks, biggest pillars in the Populist Act is establishing UBI, unconditional basic income, which
Mhm.
would ensure that every American family is lifted up above the poverty line with a guaranteed $20,000 a year for every adult, plus $8,000 a year for their children. And that would give all families, pregnant mothers or all families, more freedom in being able to say no to work that puts their lives and their health at risk.
And that's what I like about this podcast is that Bryant brings the subjects, he brings some attention, and then he ends it with this is what the Populist Act can do. And that is what we want to always end with. So that's fresh in your head, in your mind, that there's something that can be done, and the Populist Act can make these things happen because of what we've just covered under paid family leave. He's giving you the title, unstacked, and you can know and look for yourselves. But we are going to end this episode, and I'm wanting Bryant to tell you again, as he has it written there, what are we going to get from you?
Well,
Say it again.
yep. Good. My name is Brian, and I'm asking for you to vote with me in the 2026 midterms so that together we can collectively bargain for this better social contract for passage of the Populist Act. You can learn more about my campaign on my website, votewithbrian.com.
Okay. And next episode, I want you to stay tuned because it's regulating AI. So stay tuned. But until then, subscribe, bring a friend, and we enjoy you being here. Thank you, and bye bye.